everyone, welcome back to the Laura Show. I am with an old colleague. Well, she's not old by any stretch of the imagination, but I have known Sehr for 10 years now.
10 years
We kind of got into the business around the same time. So Sehr is a top real estate agent, not just in the city of Toronto, but in the whole country, which probably means worldwide. She sells a couple hundred units, pre-construction units, every single year. She's growing a team, and she does it looking like this. So we can all learn a little bit from her. Sehr Mahmood, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Laura, for having me. I know you were telling me about this show back in January, and I was like, when am I going to be a guest? So I'm very honored to be here.
I had some guests at the start. You were always on my short list, but sometimes you want to make sure that the show has legs.
Oh, for sure. I'm just playing with you.
And no, of course we wanted to have you. We have some things in common for sure, but there's certainly one thing that I want to touch base on right off the bat. And that is just simply your tenacity. I think when I talk with real estate, because I train real estate agents, I also am a real estate agent. So over the course of 10 years, I've had a lot of conversations with people about their business and how things are going. And there is just one thing I think that really stands out about you, and that's your work ethic.
Right.
Today, even. Actually, let's start with yesterday. Yesterday, you gave me a phone call. I hope you don't mind me airing some information about you. But like yesterday, you're calling me and you're like, Laura, I'm not feeling good. And here I anticipated that you were canceling because I get people who cancel on my podcast. And I get it. Life happens. Things happen. People have to cancel. So I'm like, oh no, that's unfortunate. You're like, you know what? It's going to be fine. We're going to get through it. I just wanted to let you know and make sure that was okay. And I was like, hell yeah, that's okay. Of course it's okay. So that's, check mark number one in my books. Like, she's not feeling good, but here she shows up anyways. And this morning, this girl calls or messages me saying, just got my car stolen. I'm still coming, but I might be 20 minutes late. I'm like, first and foremost, you okay? Everything's good. And second, amazing. Like, that is the type of hustle that I'm talking about. You're like, I'll file the police report after the podcast.
Yeah.
Don't you think that's where a lot of agents just seem to miss the mark, maybe?
Yeah, I think a key to success in this industry is keeping your composure at all times because there's always things happening, and it might be personal, it might be a deal falling apart and so forth, but you got to stick to your schedule, you got to make it to where you got to be and really prioritize that. Because, I woke up, there was a flood in my unit. That's the first thing that happened in the morning. Yes. I had to deal with that. Then I went down, my car has been stolen, but I could sit there and cry about it, or I could just say, you know what, let's just get this done and sort that out because I'm not going to find my car in the next 45 minutes in the morning. So get through the day and then deal with it.
And you come in with a smile on your face. There's a lightness about you as well. Where does that tenacity come from? I suspect for a lot of people, it's like how they're raised. Some people just, glass is half empty, right?
Yeah.
There's certainly people out in the world who say, oh, I got to fight with my spouse, so I'm going to cancel this. Or, the dog's sick, so I'm going to cancel. And they look for every opportunity to get out of things, even though they know that those things are going to help propel them toward their dreams. Where does your work ethic come from?
I think it comes from the fact that, I came here as an international student. I really had nothing and I had to make it work. So ever since I was much younger, I was here and I said, my back's up against the wall, I have to get things done. So I have no choice, I need to get a work permit, I need to get my passport, I had to go through all those steps. And it was a lot of work, I started in real estate, I had no database, I had no friends here, no family. And I literally started at zero, no money, no friends, no database. And I was like, how do I become successful in this business? So I think that instilled a lot of work ethic in me because I knew that I was starting from such a low bar. And I had to really catch up to all the other top agents in a small amount of time.
I always say it's interesting when the umbilical cord is kind of cut for a lot of people. Right? People say, well, I'll become a full-time agent when the income kind of matches what I'm making at my current job. I'm like, sometimes you got to just cut that cord. You got to cut the safety net because then, like you said, your back's against the wall.
It's really I really think about that, and it's about burning your boats. You can't have a backup plan. This is your plan, and you have to make this work. I always see, a lot of part-time agents and they're doing other jobs and then they never reach that pinnacle of success that they're looking for because they still have that job that you can't be doing multiple things at the same time and be successful to that degree. You need to put a lot of effort, you need to put a lot of strategy, a lot of planning, So
take me back. How old were you when you came here? on the student?
I came for my undergrad. I came 2 years in. I was around 20 years old.
Okay.
I was actually studying in the US for 2 years, and then my parents said, oh, we can't afford it anymore because it was triple the amount of Canada. And then they gave me a set budget to come to Canada with. I came with that. I did my undergrad, and that was it.
So your parents didn't come here with you?
No, I came all by myself.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And what were you going to school for?
I was going to school for economics. So, the first hurdle that I had to overcome was I wasn't Canadian at that time. So once I graduated, that was my first hurdle. I got a job at ING Direct, just $29,000 a year as a customer service representative. And when you have zero, you're like, 29,000, that's great. And I was so excited. Right a week before my job started, they called me and said, oh, we didn't realize you're not Canadian, so we can't sponsor you. So, that was like, I was like, what do you mean? So basically I had no job at that time. Then I had to go look for opportunities where someone was willing to sponsor me. I found a small bookkeeping firm that was willing to hire me for $1,000 a month.
Oh my gosh.
So I lived on
That's not even paying
not
even a fraction
so
of the rent.
I lived in a room at Keel and Finch for $300, and I had to make life expenses meet for $700 a month.
Wow.
Like upsizing like a Happy Meal was expensive for me back then.
Wow.
So I went through that for 3 years because I saw that end goal, which was to get my my PR card. So I needed to do that work permit for 3 years, get my PR, and I always kept my eye on the goal. So I wasn't worried about where am I today. Like today I'm making $1,000 a month, which is fine. But once I get my PR, the world is my oyster. Hopefully I can get more opportunities. So I always thought of it in a long-term setting rather than what am I going through today.
So it sounds like you weren't really focusing on your circumstance now. It was always like this big dream.
Yes.
And you were always kind of like eye on the prize. That's so interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong. You went back to school to do your MBA,
yes.
right? Because we're both Schulich alumni.
Exactly.
Yes.
So after I got, my PR, I was like, okay, this is great. But then, I kind of looked at all the job opportunities out there. You couldn't really get very far with an undergrad. So I said, why don't I invest in myself and go back and get an MBA? So I went to RBC. I took out an $80,000 loan. I went to the Schulich School of Business. And when I graduated, it was 2008. It was the midst of the financial crisis. Nobody was hiring. And here I am, no job, $80,000 in debt. I didn't know what to do next. And I already invested all this money, into my schooling. And I was like, I can't take another big loan out. What do I do right now? And then I kind of thought about, what do I really want to do? And I had no answers. I was pretty much lost. I was lucky to get in touch with, I made a friend who was a realtor, and I was observing their lifestyle. I was like, this doesn't look too complicated. I think I can do this. It's not a big investment. It's about 6 months of my time, a few $1,000s. I'm not spending $80,000 like I did again. And, after a few years of dwindling, that's what I did. I went and I got my license, and I said, now I really got to make this work because I've already wasted 2 years of my life. I have all this debt, and there's no turning back now.
So it's interesting. I decided I wanted to get into real estate while I was doing my MBA. Mm-hmm. It's not why I started doing my MBA. I wanted to get into marketing, maybe advertising, definitely more the creative side of things. Mm-hmm. But while I was there, people dropped some seeds and they thought, Laura, I think you'd be a great real estate agent. My husband happens to be a real estate agent, although not a traditional agent. He's a commercial real estate agent. He wasn't my husband at the time, and I was watching all the shows, $1 Million Listing. I was like, well, that looks pretty great. But I remember telling people that I was going to get my real estate license while I was doing my MBA. And I could kind of see on some people's faces, I don't know if you had the same experience, they were kind of like, you're going to get your MBA and then you're going to become a real estate agent? Like, you don't need an MBA to be a real estate agent. Like, it almost felt like they thought it was a waste. Like, why spend all this time? Did you feel the same?
So I did not feel that way. And actually, most of the realtors don't have an MBA. We're one of the very few that do. I actually think the opposite, that my MBA has made me come as far as I have in real estate because it taught me so much about business sense, discipline, meeting deadlines for assignments. I was, surrounded by a lot of people who are very, very smart. So I think it taught me a lot of things that have made me have a successful company today. So was it the financial formulas I was learning? No, but I learned a lot about work ethic, discipline, structure, having a plan, making a business plan, and then being able to stick to it to succeed.
Yeah, I think so many realtors don't understand when they get into the industry, either they're not loving their job or life circumstance happens, a divorce or something, and they got to get back into the workforce. So a lot of people kind of fall into real estate a little bit, and I actually felt a lot like you, and I thought, this is a real business and it should be treated as such. I think, unfortunately, where some realtors go wrong is they don't treat it like a real business. They'll say, I don't like bosses, so I'm going to quit my job. But the problem is that you are an awful boss because you don't meet deadlines, you don't show up, you cancel anytime you have obligations. And I agree with you. I think you really do learn that. It's always those ancillary skills, right, that you learn when you're at school.
You go from going from a 9 to 5, now it's a 24/7. You got to run your business like a business. And that's where most people fail. There's like friends of mine who are getting their nails done in the middle of the day and getting their hair done. Like, no, you gotta be on schedule and run it like you're the CEO of this company.
Yeah, even if it's just one person, right?
Yeah.
So when you started in real estate, I know the story because you were on the same team.
Yeah.
And when I joined, I think I was a year or two just after you had started, and everyone was talking about Sehr because you had done, I don't know the amount of lease deals that you did, so you'll have
120 my first year.
The first year, 120 lease deals. So, when people are looking at you and they're thinking, oh, she has this successful business, things come easy to her. I hope you're starting to understand from the story is that she didn't have a silver spoon. It wasn't easy for you. And you started grinding, like lease deals are a grind because you're showing properties every weekend, every evening, because the people that you're showing, like they have jobs during the day. So you're working all the hours that no one wants to be. And then they want to see every property as if they're buying a house and it's their dream home. So it takes just as many showings and you get paid a fraction of the amount.
Yeah.
Why did you start with lease deals?
So the reason that I started with lease deals, to be honest, was because I had no database. So like I said, when I came here, I didn't know many people. I knew a few people from university, but that was it. So I didn't have that network growing up from like high school or like a church or a mosque or like parents who have friends or any family here to buy from and things like that. So it's like I'm literally starting my database at zero. I was told to get a CRM and I inputted all the people that I knew and I was at like 12 people. So I was like, what do I do now? And there's no going back from here. I've done my undergrad, I've done my MBA, I've gotten a real estate license, this is it. So I actually had a business plan for my leases and I had a very strict structure that I followed every day. I would wake up in the morning. I was getting all my business off Kijiji at that point because back then in 2012 that was the thing. I think now people go on Facebook Marketplace, but essentially the same thing. So I would post other people's listings in the morning, like 2 ads saying open house from 5 to 6 and then 6 to 7. So 2 different properties and I'd have all these people show up. Sometimes it was a really
you would get permission from the landlord. Okay.
From the listing agent.
Got it.
I would pick a brand new listing that came up that day and say, hey, can I advertise it? Most people say yes.
They just want to get it leased.
Yeah, and if they don't, you just move on to the next. There's many listings that come up every day. I would put an ad up saying open house. So that way I wasn't filtering too many phone calls. It was like you just show up. Once they showed up, I had a registration list. So I had their names, emails, and phone numbers. And usually I would have 10 to 15 people show up to each one.
So I was building all these open houses for a whole year, 2 years you did this.
So I did for a year and a half. So not only was I getting a deal nearly every night, because out of those 20, 30 people you're meeting in 1 to 2 units, sometimes they'd even be in the same building or like somewhere close by, I would get a deal out of it. And I would get a database out of it of like 30 people who are looking for real estate.
It's genius.
It was genius.
It's not sexy though. I think people see you now and there's like a certain appeal about it, right?
Yeah.
Because I know you have a team and we'll get into that. But I think just on the surface, they see you on Instagram, they see you doing podcasts like this and they're like, oh, it looks so easy. But this is completely the thing of like the iceberg where all the work is down here and you're only seeing really the top part of it because
you're only seeing the icing on the cake.
Yeah, like you're literally working every single night.
Right.
Smart. You're working smart.
Smart. It's about everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. How do I make those 24 hours extremely productive? So at that time of my life, leases was the opportunity that I saw. I thought I was going to make a living for the rest of my life just doing leases. And I didn't know that I would fall into pre-construction, which is a different story. But I at least made that avenue of my business very successful and very, it's not like I didn't know when my next deal, because I was seeing that I was getting a consistent amount of, if I followed the same consistent pattern, I was getting a consistent amount of deals. Right. So I could do 10 deals a month. That's what I was seeing.
Well, I think what so many people get wrong is that they're like, well, look, I want to focus on selling properties, selling homes, and I want to make the $25,000 checks.
Yeah.
But if you're new and you're waiting for those big bangers, you're not having enough real estate conversations. No. Where you were having real estate conversations every day, you were doing contract work every single day. You were doing offers.
And the biggest thing that I would say was my biggest asset was I was able to learn every single building in downtown Toronto within 3 months. I literally knew, like when I saw the listing, I knew exactly what floor plan that is, because I've been in all these buildings like so many times, you know, to the point where sometimes I'd have a friend say, hey, can you help me with a rental? I didn't even need to take her to 6 units. I was making it very efficient because I knew from the 6 listings that came up, which is the best one, because I'd been in these units in and out all day long.
Right.
So I got to know that downtown market.
It was your education.
Very well. It was the best education I could ever have. You know, you come out of the Oria College, you know nothing. Like your work starts after you're out.
Yeah, that's literally just learning. To filter people through, to make it a little bit difficult so that not everyone just runs out and gets their license.
It was like the best thing I could have done, because if I was waiting for those sale clients to get to know, you know, the market, it would have taken me years.
I gotta say, I did the opposite. I was like, no, I want those big bangers.
Yeah.
I was trying to farm Banbury and Don Mills, and I had some success with it, some like initial success, but I think where I missed the mark is that they were so few and far between that I would go months without seeing a paycheck. And someone in your situation where you're like, look, I got my rent to pay, I got bills to pay, I have loans to pay off. Like I had a safety net because I still had my husband. He would have been my husband at the time. So, you know, I didn't have my back up against the wall, and I think the work showed it.
Right.
Versus someone like you where you're like, and not only did you do it 1 year, how many deals in the first year, I guess?
120.
120 the first year, and then the second year you come back just to show everyone that it could be repeated.
Yeah, so the second year I did, I think about same, 100, and I was starting to get into pre-construction as well. So I think I added on 50 deals in pre-con as well that year.
Okay.
And then it just transition straight into pre-con.
This is around 2014, right?
Yeah.
Then, when you got into pre-con. So tell me about your segue into pre-con, because it's the sexy thing now, especially maybe not today so much, but certainly, you know, 2020, 2021, when there was no inventory. The only inventory was pre-construction condos. Right. So I think we saw a lot of agents trying to get into that market. You started much earlier when it wasn't really an exciting thing.
When I started pre-con, it was slow. Like it wasn't. The hot market in pre-con wasn't until 2016. So I had a good year and a half where it was kind of like now. It was pretty slow. Builders were giving a lot of incentives and so forth. And the way that I got introduced to pre-con was I became such a good rental agent that, so there was like Liberty Village was very up and coming 10 years ago. There was a lot of new buildings coming up. When I was doing the leases, I saw that the same agents had, you know, 5 or 6 listings in a building. And I called one of them up and I said, how do you have all these listings in the building? And he goes, oh, because I do pre-construction. And at that time, that word was so foreign to me. I didn't understand what it meant. And I said, you know, I want to learn about that. So that was how I started to, you know, get introduced to pre-construction. And when I was a lease agent, I became so good that these same realtors who had multiple listings coming up, because keep in mind, if you do just pre-construction, you do 20 sales in a building, now you have 20 units to rent out once it occupies.
Right.
And, you know, for people who are in sales, they don't want to deal with that. So I had these few agents, they were from the condo store, they just literally gave me their keys and said, you go deal with it, it's not even going to go on MLS, just bring us an offer. So I was essentially like getting the buyer side, but I was technically also the listing agent. So now I started advertising on Kijiji as pretty much the listing agent because it was my exclusive keys that I had, you know, access to.
So at one point, you know, I'm going to hear it, right?
Yeah.
One of the questions is like, how do you get in with the builders?
Yes.
Now, maybe at that time it was a little bit different, but what would be your advice? Because I think the hardest part nowadays is the builders do, things have kind of shifted. They work with a select group of people.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're
Yeah.
one of those people, what we like to call platinum agents, who have shown time and time again that they can sell in any type of market, that they have a database of people, that they're willing to put money into it to market the buildings. How would you suggest someone get into that space today?
So the way that I did it at that time was I didn't work on a hot new launch. I basically took an already existing launch and I worked leftover inventory. So, I walked
stuff
into...
no one wanted.
Yeah. So I walked into a sales office and I said, I want to sell the building. What do I have to do? And they're like, well, do you have buyers? And I was like, I'm going to find some. So I went back to my rental clients. I had a database of 5,000 people who'd raised their hand looking for real estate. Granted, they're rentals, but I think what people don't understand is that just because you're renting doesn't mean that you don't have money. There was a lot of executives in there, people who come from New York on a 1-year contract and so forth. They still have money. They just choose to rent for whatever reason it might be. So not everybody in that list.
And people who rent saved some money in those years and then they want to buy, right?
Exactly. And actually, I got a lot of deals from the rental clients because I was explaining to them how they don't need the 20% down right now. They have to have 5% in installments, and they have a 2-year timeline. So I actually managed to get a lot of deals. My first weekend, though, in that project, I did 7 deals. So literally from my tenant database, I started calling people up. I said, there's a great opportunity at Yonge and Eglinton. Are you interested? And I prepared my pitch. Preparation is key. You have to know what you're talking about. I learned the development really well. What are the angles to push it? And I did 7 sales. And then after that, I was like, oh, great. Now I know how to sell Yonge and Eglinton. And that became my niche for the next 6 months. I didn't just go all over the place with different sites.
Oh, interesting.
I stuck to Yonge and Eglinton only because that's what I knew really well. I knew about the LRT coming in. I knew the growth that was happening there and so forth.
You had your spiel down, right? Like, and that information is important because when people are buying pre-construction condos, it's not going to be built for 4, 5, 6 years in some cases. And so they're really saying like, well, what's the future value of my property? And you can't be kind of humming and hawing.
Yeah.
So that's a good tactic not to, because I think oftentimes we see pre-construction agents, right? They're all over the place.
They're all over the
place.
place.
Doing it for so many years so that they know all of those areas. That's interesting.
So then I went to another competing building that I just launched. I sold, close to 20 units in there. And then what started happening was that other builders started hearing about, oh, there's this girl and she sold like 20 units in this site. Who is she? So people started calling me and said, hey, we also have a site at Yonge and Eglinton. Do you want to come meet with us?
Right.
That's the first time that I met with Milbourne, for example, and Pemberton and so forth.
So you built those relationships, but it's so interesting because people trying to get in the pre-construction space now, and again, it's always perception, right? They see you as successful now and they're like, well, I want to walk in and be able to call someone from Milbourne's office and get 20 units, but I can't. They only see it as I can't, but it's not like you knew them. It's not like you were like,
and
oh,
the
hey,
sales
friends.
were not, they were not allocation sales. These are like me going there one by one, a few days apart.
They were literally like, here, no one wants these.
Yeah, these are off like a list, of a hot list. These are not allocations. I don't even understand that there was allocations at that time.
And
I thought this was the
first access
process.
pricing. So we talk so often about first access pricing. You would have had these units not at first access.
Right. So my third project then became first access, but the first 2 sites they weren't first access pricing, but it's still good value, So if you explain to people that it's not always about being there on the first day because real estate is going to grow.
Yeah.
What you buy in 2014 and when you look back, when it's 2018, 2019, if you look at real estate in 5-year cycles.
Especially if they're not investor clients and they were the end users because they were the tenants who wanted to become owners.
Yeah.
Like they're going to live there for 10, 20 years maybe, like who knows?
Yeah.
So they might not even really care so much. Like they picture their life living there in those places.
Right.
Okay. So I love this. I love to unpack these things because I actually didn't know all this about you.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I didn't, but...
so then next thing you know, I have 70 sales at Yonge and Eglinton.
Right.
I knew this market. And then, builders started to call me and they're like, oh, we have this project in Maple. And I said, oh, no, I sell Yonge and Eglinton only. And they're like, excuse me? I was like, okay, maybe it's time to diversify a little bit. And then I started going into downtown and, learning that pre-construction market. So I kind of did it in segments before. Now I sell everything everywhere.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like that in the beginning.
But it also helped because you had all this previous experience, right? So you had the experience. So you could talk to someone and say, this is the type of rent you're going to get because you knew exactly what the rent was in the buildings.
Yeah.
Or you know, this is how much it's going to be worth in a couple years. So you had, you know, these things build up on top of each other. So it's not like, you know, you get your license one day and then you're a pre-construction expert the next.
No,
it
you're
really
not.
It is a bit of a process. Okay, I want to kind of touch base. At what point were you thinking, okay, I want to start a team? Because you're growing, you're doing all this business, you know, I'm sure things got crazy busy. Like when you're, I don't think people understand, when you're doing 20 units in a day, the amount of paperwork, the amount of phone calls, the amount of text messages that you're getting from the clients, like it's nonstop. You're like, you can't breathe, really, right? So at what point were you like, you know what, I think I kind of need to start letting some of my dollars out of my pocket go to other people so that I can really start to expand this?
Yeah, I think that happened for me 3.5 years after I did my first pre-construction deal. So, you know, my first year I did 70, 80 units. In the second year I doubled that. You know, I could consistently do 200 units a year myself. So once I had that for 3 years, I said, how do I get to the next level? Because now I can't do any more. That was kind of like my cap. And, you know, I had agents who were also part of the team at that time who were like, hey, like you're on this pre-construction bandwagon. Can we help you out? Is there anything we can do? And at that time I was like, no. Like I'm a one-man show. I don't need anybody. I'm going to do this on my own. And I didn't realize that, you know, you need to leverage other people's help to be able to get ahead. Because I was pretty like content doing like 200 deals a year. But then,
yeah, it's a good little income too. But, you know, at some point you probably get this bug of like, well, what could it be?
Yeah.
You know?
So then I said, I can grow from here. And then I had a lot of builders at this point, you know, wanting to build those relationships with me, wanting me as a part of their sites. And I said, I physically can't do more sites. So that's when I said, okay, let me bring on one person. So it was one person for like 6-7 months. Then I added on 3 more people. And then it started, like 2019 was my first year when I had, you know, a proper full team that I got.
As someone who hires staff,
so it's not that long ago.
No, it's not that long ago. But like you know, I have staff. I have people who help. I don't consider myself a great delegator because I am kind of cut, I think, from the same cloth in you in that like I'm like, but I'm like, you know, I want control and I feel some reason that I can do it better because I've known it, or at least if I make a mistake, it's my mistake and I can look myself in the mirror versus giving it off. Was it hard for you to delegate work to other people and to let them kind of run with it?
I think the hard part was that I thought that everybody who's going to be part of my team is going to have that same level of work ethic and the same motivation as me. So, you know, I was okay with delegating and saying, okay, you can have this site, you can have this site. What I found challenging was that, you know, I'd look in the CRM and like people haven't been called, and I'm like, oh, I spent 4 years running this business, and it was like the lead comes in, you got to call them in 2 minutes, or most of the time you can't find them after that. So things
they found
like
another
that.
agent, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, because most of them register on multiple sites at the same time, so they've already spoken to somebody.
Right.
So that's like the challenge that I found was, you know, the fact that not everyone is going to be aligned with the work ethic. Everybody just saw me making a lot of money. They said, oh my God, she's making like over $1 million a year now. We want to be her. But it's about, do you want that process? It's not about, do you want that result? Everybody wants that result.
Yeah.
But do they want to have that work ethic and put the time in that it takes to get there?
Yeah, I always say people have a lot of ambition, but their work ethic doesn't seem to match the ambition. I think where you get to a happy place in life is where you recognize how much work you're really willing to do, and then matching your ambition to that.
Yes.
Not the opposite.
So you know, that was kind of like what I've realized now, that not everyone's going to come in and want to say, I want to make $1 million a year, because they want to, but would they be able to have that work ethic? The answer usually is no. So I try and align my team members with what is your actual goal of what you want to make, which has to align with the level of work you're going to put in. Because if you come and tell me I want to make $1 million a year, I can coach you to do that, but it's not going to be fun.
You're going to have to work the way I work.
You're going to have to work the way. You're going to have to mimic my lifestyle. And you know, some people say, yes, we're in, and then 3-4 weeks later, you find out like they're like, oh, the drive is really long, and there's a lot of excuses, and they fall off that bandwagon. They just don't know what it takes.
What is the lifestyle of Sehr? This question's not on my card. I'm now just curious because you said it, like match my lifestyle. Like, what does a typical day look like for you?
So the typical days, I mean, obviously, like, I have very few weekends off, so you have to be okay with that. Like this whole long weekend, there was a lot of planning going on, so I mean, I can't just go relax. So I have to be okay with sacrifice. I would say that's the biggest takeaway, that, it's been a lot of sacrifice. I have had to miss a lot of birthdays and events and weddings and so forth, but it's because I see myself, where do I want to be 20 years from now? Do I want to work the way that I work then? And the answer is no. So while I'm healthy, while I'm vibrant, I want to make as much of my business as I can now, and I'm willing to sacrifice today to have that, in the future.
In the future. Any regrets about that? And I ask this maybe selfishly because, sometimes it's hard for me, like, to balance, like, relationships with parents and friends and spouses or partners and business partners and staff, and it's not always easy, and you generally feel like you're failing somebody every single day.
Yes, and I think you have to be a little bit like okay with that. So for me, like the way that I do the things that I want to do, I still go to the gym 5 to 6 times a week, so I fit that in. I love animals. I'm still doing volunteering. I still help a lot of charities and so forth. I had an event last year in Mexico for 137 dogs that we spayed and neutered. I have another one in December. So I still managed to fit that in by having a very set schedule. And I think that's the key to finding that balance, that I know for about 2 weeks in advance what my schedule. I mean, would I love to know, what's happening in November? Yes, but it's not realistic.
Yeah.
But I do have a 2-week schedule that gets planned. All my workouts are planned. All my, social events are planned, builder events, if I have a birthday party, and then work, timelines of when a mailer for a project is going to go out. And
so literally, like, when you wake up in the morning, you open the calendar.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, right now I'm supposed to be doing this. Like, your calendar's full.
Yes,
of what
the calendar's full. I know that, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to get this done today, despite everything, because I was like, you know what? Like, it's in my calendar. It needs to get done. So that's one of the big things I live by. And that's how I make time for myself as well, by having that set schedule.
Yeah, I think people sometimes there's a misconception around being particular about a schedule, because it's like, oh, well, you have no life. You live by the schedule. It's like, but the schedule gives me the life.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because otherwise you're frantically running around. When you're with family, you're thinking about work. When you're at work, you're thinking about family or whatever it is. And you're never really present. Right. And I actually find, like, I'm quite meticulous. Like, every morning I wake up at the same time. I do my workout in the morning. And when my routine gets messed up, I like kind of fall apart a little bit. Like, I need that structure so that the rest of the day kind of unravels the way I want it to.
Yeah. And I think for me, I've been able to, like, find ways to buy back my time. So because I live alone, like with my animals, I don't cook. And the reason I don't cook is because to go grocery shopping, come home, cook, clean, all of that stuff, to me, I'd rather be doing something else, and I just order food. So I buy back that.
So do you get like a food delivery service, or do you just order?
Usually I'm just doing Uber, like Uber Eats. And I find that as an efficient way for me with my lifestyle to buy back my time.
Yeah.
I don't clean my house. I have a maid that comes in that buys back 3 hours a week for me. So things like that helps me to do other things and still get everything done that I need to.
It's so funny because oftentimes I just find, like, I'll say in front of the team, like, oh, my dog walker canceled today, or my cleaning lady, she just had a baby, and so now she's off and I gotta figure it all out. And of course they're probably rolling their eyes at me like, oh, it would be nice to have all these people. But I really found it as an investment in myself. Like, even when I couldn't really afford the help, I did, because I knew that 1 hour or 2 hours every single week I could put that time towards building my business, which would 10x my life. So it was like understanding that those are really investments to help you further your career.
I think, like, one of the things to be successful is to only focus on what you do best and let somebody else worry about the rest. My advice to, like, most realtors is get an assistant who can, like, take off a lot of the headaches of, like, doing the listing agreements for you and paperwork and things like that, and focus on generating leads and making sales. Because people are at the office all day and I see them, but when you actually look at their work day, there's not that much efficiency in there. So it's about, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. How do I make it the most efficient? So buy back your time, because the 40,000 you're gonna spend getting an assistant, you're going to get more sales in a year to be able to cover that very easily.
It's like the simple principle of, like, it takes money to make money, right?
Exactly.
So you got to invest in yourself first. I'm going to go through a little bit of rapid fire audience questions that came in for you. Interest rate announcement just came out. We're holding interest rates, thank God. I think real estates around the country are like, thank the Lord, because hopefully that will inspire some confidence in the
Yeah.
market. But how have you navigated a market that has been down 50%? What have you done differently?
I think it's about educating the clients a little bit more. So people, of course, people are buying a lot less now, but I think that what they were waiting for and what people are waiting for is interest rate stability. Our interest rates are high, but they're not as high as they used to be. Like back in the day, you talk to people 15 years ago, people were paying like 12% interest rates, 8%, right? So we were just very spoiled that we had literally free money for the last few years. And I think now that there's stability in the market, things will pick up. But even during the past 1 year, we've still been doing sales because we show them that real estate is a long-term game. You're not buying this to flip it in 3 years. You can't think of real estate like that. Think of it long-term. There's still value in the fact that you're buying in one of the safest countries in the world, one of the most stable. You look at the trajectory of real estate over the past 50 years, it's gone up. It's like a rubber band. It's going to go up, it's going to go down, but in general, the trend has been to go up. So showing them the value of buying, where their money is going to go. And we've still been able to get great deals now, actually. The interest rates being high and the demand being less has been a great time in pre-construction to get deals that you could never get before.
Yeah, you can actually negotiate for once with
Yes,
builders.
you can negotiate. In 2021, you want a 1-bedroom facing south, it'll be like, here's a 2-bedroom on the north side, take it or leave it, and it's on the 13th floor. Oh, and you have 1 minute to tell us if you want that unit.
Right.
That's the market we were in. Now you can get to choose and pick your unit. You're getting better incentives than we've ever seen before. So I think that now is actually a great time to invest in pre-construction.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big proponent of pre-construction. I know that you've purchased pre-constructions for yourself. We're both pre-con investors. So it's easy for us to talk to the market about it because we believe in it so much. And it's also interesting because we were talking offline about Canada, being a safe place. And I think we take that for granted too. Like you were talking about interest rates, and we take all these things for granted that we live in this amazing country and things are relatively safe and there's not that much corruption, I'll call it, compared to all these other places. And the fundamentals are there, right? So if you take a look at the number of people who are coming into this country every single year, they have to go somewhere.
1 million people became Canadians last year, and the estimate is 500,000 for this year.
And we are not building.
We're delivering about 20,000 units a year. So when you look at the demand and the supply, there's definitely an imbalance there. So don't think of real estate as what's happening today. Think of it with a long-term vision.
Oh, that's great advice. Another thing that I think my team has found really, really useful in a down market is content creation, right? Leading with education, putting stuff out on social to not focus on sales necessarily today, because oftentimes I'll hear, like if I put up a video, I expect to get a sale from it, but really more with the intention of just planting seeds for maybe the future. How do you feel about content creation? How has that kind of helped your business?
Yeah, so I was like not doing any content creation till I think 2020, and now I'm like dived, full blown into it, and I think it really helps your business. And I tell even all the agents I know, all my team members, you have to produce content. It's very, very important for visibility, especially if you're new. Because visibility beats ability. So you're new, you don't have that much experience under your belt, at least go out there, educate people, talk about the projects that we're doing in pre-construction, educate them on, make an interest rate video, for example, or anything that's happening during the day, make a little video, and people say, oh, well, I only have 20 followers, there's nobody watching, oh, my friends are, the excuses I hear even within my own team, oh, my friends are 25 years old, they're not buying real estate, things like that. But Einstein has this great quote that not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that you can count can be counted. So do you think that Coca-Cola has billboards out there and says, I wonder how many people drove by that billboard and then went to buy a Coke at the grocery store right after? No, but they still do it. Yeah. So you got to build that brand awareness because you're going to be in this business for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years.
And them thinking that I only have, my friends are only 25. Well, your friends will eventually be 30.
Exactly.
They will buy. They also have parents. They have cousins. They have people who have the ability to buy. So I just find real estate agents can be so short-sighted.
Yes.
Around so many things.
You got to build that credibility online and show people that you know what you're doing, what you're talking about. And if they might not buy today, they might not buy this year, but they will, like you said, buy eventually. Also, like for me, for example, I do a lot of online lead generation. So if you're not putting yourself out there on social media and posting, about projects and so forth. When they Google you, what are they going to see? Just you like out with your friends on your social media? Like people are now being very savvy. They want to know who they're
That's
working
like your
with.
resume.
That's like
right?
your resume.
Your Instagram profile is your resume. There's two things I want to touch on. The first one is around confidence, because I heard you say before, I would just pick up the phone and call people in my database and see if they wanted to buy something. And obviously now your recommendation is to put out tips, start educating people. But a lot of people that I talk to, at least, there's lack of confidence. It's, I don't know if I know the information well enough, or what if someone says no to me on the phone? Were you just naturally a confident person? Is this something that you worked on?
I think the key for me and my team is we prepare for our phone calls. So, a lot of the lead generation I do is on Google, and it's project specific. So before anybody can get on the phone, I want to make sure they know the project, that they know the area. And I personally coach them on like how to answer objections. So once you're prepared, you have that confidence. The key is preparation in everything, Like a dream without a plan is just a wish. You have to have a strategy. You got to have a set plan of how you're going to get things done, and that will lead to confidence.
Yeah, I kind of always say like the confidence comes out of the doing, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to pick up the phone and find out what some of the objections are going to be first, or you have to post a video first to see if if you get a single like, and like all you need is that one like to say, okay, there's somebody watching.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be thousands of people, but there's one person that took the time to hit the like button or maybe comment and build off of that. I think people want to be famous first, or they want the confidence first.
Right.
And then everything's going to follow, right? And it really is a path.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. About lead generation, we had some questions about this, and I hope you're willing to share.
Of course.
How does your whole lead generation system work? Because I think people who want to get in the pre-con space, they know they should be putting up ads, but they don't know what to do with the ads, or like, how does that all work for you?
So for me, we focus mainly on Google Ads, and I actually started this, early in my career as well. So in the beginning, I was focusing on my own database. I would say the first thing you need to do if you're brand new and you're getting into pre-construction is there's deals in your database, whether you believe it or not. People that you know who have already bought resale through somebody else, it doesn't matter. Pre-construction is a different niche, and most resale realtors are not pushing pre-con onto their clients. So if you have a database, reach out to them, pump out some deals from those. Then that's when I started. Once I did about 50 deals from my database, I said, okay, now I have the first installments coming in. I'm not going to go buy brand new shoes and a brand new purse. I'm going to roll that back into my business. So invest in yourself. I think that I was spending about $2,000 to $3,000, so not much, $2,000 to $3,000 a month on Google Ads back when I first started.
Yeah.
And I was getting 20x return at that time. You spend $2,500, you do 2 deals, it's close to $50,000 in commission. You're 20xing your money. So it was people just don't want to invest in themselves.
Yeah.
They think like this is a business where I shouldn't be spending any other money.
Or they start, I think what you said was, you started with your database. People say, well, I don't have money for the $3,000. Maybe it's a little bit more today to try to get on the first page of Google.
So that's what I would say is you have to put in that sacrifice. You do have $3,000 a month. If you downgrade your lifestyle, maybe you downgrade your car, maybe you get a smaller apartment. So figure out what you need to do to invest in yourself, because that will pay you back.
And stop playing the role of a realtor. I think oftentimes, and you see this at our office, like people walk around looking like real estate agents. Like it's a catwalk at times. And then you also have conversations with people, and they'll say like, I'm really struggling. I haven't done a deal in 6 months. And you're like, well, it doesn't look that way. And so I think that there is money there. It's kind of like you just have to check the ego a little bit.
Yes.
Make some sacrifices.
Exactly.
How do you prioritize which projects to pick? Do you pick them all? Do you pick some? How do you select?
No, so I think that we're we're actually pretty picky. Not as picky as you guys. We think we do a few more sites than you, but we want to make sure that they're AAA builders, that they have a track record, that they've built before. Actually just said no to a project just yesterday because I said it's the first time they're ever building. Obviously the relationship is also important, but I do love master plan communities. So right now there's a builder that I'm working with that has a new master plan community coming up in Pickering. It's going to be the first of 15 to 20 towers. So, that's something that really excites me, because I know when my investors purchase into building 1, there's always going to be appreciation in building 2 to 20 after that. So I kind of pick my sites depending on area growth, what incentives are they offering. Are they more competitive than competing sites in the area?
And like you've learned that over time. Like we've made mistakes too. Not many, thankfully. Like not many of the projects that my team has picked have ever canceled. But you learn pretty quickly like who the big boys are who are not going to cancel, or who screws your clients out on occupancy.
Yes.
You start to learn those things over time. And I think what you said was like you didn't have those relationships. But once you start to build those relationships, you realize who you like to work with and who's willing to answer your phone calls and take your requests. Like if you're like, look, I really need this. So, you know, you build relationships with people that can help you when it comes time for sales. My last question I think is more selfish for me, and perhaps you've already answered it, but I'm kind of curious to see if you come across a different answer. You know, we've talked a little bit about the charity work that you do, which I absolutely love. You're an animal lover, I'm an animal lover, and you've actually inspired me to think like, how can I add that to my life?
Right.
You're also a fashion lover, I'm a fashion lover, and although we just talked about, you know, putting money back into the business, I know you and I also like to dabble in like some fancy shoes from time to time, but that's when you can afford it.
That's when you can afford it. I think that's the key. So, you know, people see me today, and I'm very different today than I was even 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I wasn't splurging as much, you know. Now I've had that opportunity of investing in 19 pre-construction condos, and after that is when I went and I bought the fancy car.
But they see it now and they're thinking, to be Sahara, I have to go get the fancy car.
That was not me for the first 5 years. I was investing back in my business. People say, how did you afford ads? Because I gave up everything else.
And you know what, those years are going to go by anyway.
Yeah.
So you may as well take the time now just to invest and say, like, screw the vacation, screw the shoes, screw the car, screw the Gucci belt, like, everyone just relax. The years are going to go by and you'll thank yourself later. I think what I find most interesting, because we're both hard workers, we run teams, we have similar hobbies. However, the way I do it is a lot more frantic than I think the way you at least make it look.
Right.
I oftentimes have a hair out of place. My toenail just broke the other day, which is why I'm wearing like shoes like this. Like I'm a bit of a mess half the time. And I show up at work and people are like, dear Laura, like a little makeup might help today. Like just the way I run my life is a little bit more frantic. I have never seen you with a hair out of place. Please explain this to me. And I don't know if it's the time blocking or what.
So I think for me, the key is I'm very detached from outcomes. So what I mean by that is if something bad happens during, like this morning was, you know, for a lot of people it would be an awful morning. I'm very detached from that. I'm like, okay, this is what I need to do. I still need to get ready. I still need to look good for her show, and I'll deal with everything else. Similarly, when something great happens, you know, I celebrate the win, but I'm very, like, I handle everything with a lot of equipoise and calm and balance. So I think that's the way why you see me. I'm always the same exact, because I'm not going like things don't make me frantic and things don't make me super excited. I'm very
live more in the balance. Have you always been like that? Because then that makes me feel like I can't learn that, or is it a skill that
I think it's something that I've worked on for sure. You know, one of my team members said, "How are you always like calm about that?" I'm not sure, but I've learned that I need to have that balance, because this business has a lot of pressure. I have pressure from my team to get things done. I have pressure from sellers who now say, sell my assignment at 100,000 more when the market's not there. There's a lot of pressure on that. There's pressure from builders saying, what's happening with the allocations? Are they getting sold? There's a lot of pressure every day. So I feel like I need to have that balance in my life. I need to have that structure in my life to be able to keep excelling.
I think it's absolutely incredible what you've accomplished at such a young age. It's really, truly inspiring.
Thank you.
I definitely look up to you as someone to emulate for sure. What do you think is maybe I'll kind of summarize it here. What do you think maybe is the biggest misconception that people have about Sehr?
I think that people think it just came so easy. I think a lot of people don't know the backstory. They don't know how much, like it took me 10 years to get to where I am today. So it's not an overnight success by any means. You know, there was a lot of struggle that went along the way. And, you know, you don't see all that on Instagram and social media. You only see the best of the best.
Right.
So I think what the other misconception would be that, you know, the life seems very glamorous, but it's a lot of sacrifice. So while it's very glamorous to go on 15 builder trips a year, you have to think about the fact that you're away from home. You're going to be away from, you know, people might have families. I have my pets, I have my business. You have to be able to fit that into your schedule And it can be exhausting
Traveling's
sometimes.
not always that
Traveling
fun.
is exhausting because you're still running your business. So you have to always be sacrificing. You're missing events that you want to be at because there's events that you now have to be at. So everything that you see is not,
Yeah. I with the social, I try to showcase a little bit more of the ugly side of things, or just like more of my life, because I do want people to understand that there is this backstory. Like, yeah, you came in and you look so fantastic today, but like you're probably gonna go home and then you're gonna sit at your computer and work for the next 8 hours. Like, people don't see that.
So I think what people don't see is the monotony of the whole situation. So you see the glamorous aspect, but like the day to day is very boring, very mundane, and very monotonous. So we're building our development pitches, we're putting together mailers, we're doing like financial analysis.
And you do the same thing next week. It's new building.
You're making phone calls. Like, you're literally doing the same thing every single day, and you have to be okay with that process and that monotony to be successful. So the award you see is just the glamour part, but all that work that goes in, people don't see that.
Well, you guys heard it straight from Sahara's mouth. It takes a lot of work and a lot of patience. Sahara, thank you so much for taking the time on this crazy day.
You're so welcome.
Truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And guys, we'll see you next time.